Let's go over the problem of the 2022 Tundra's payload. Now, I do a lot of research when I go to buy vehicles, and when I was researching this vehicle as more information became available, I found myself needing a beer every now and then to try to comprehend and make sense out of the numbers Toyota was putting forward. I was very much interested in a truck that might have increased payload. This one promised that, but let's go through why that promise was compromised. Now, if you like this video, feel free to hit like and subscribe. And if you don't like it, feel free to hit dislike. And definitely feel free to comment. I really enjoy reading some of the comments, again, over a beer, because some people are just quite outrageous with what they think. Now, when we start talking about payload, we're essentially talking about the weight carrying and stopping components of the vehicle. This means primarily the frame, the suspension, the brakes, and of course the axles. These things are all part of determining the gross vehicle weight rating, or the curb weight of the vehicle, which if we look in the second line down from my 2018 Toyota Tundra 4x4 here in the CrewMax version, is 7,200 pounds for that vehicle, or 3,265 kilograms. To begin with, Toyota did make some changes that should positively affect the payload. First off, what you see right here is that they've gone from 5 lugs to 6 lugs. 6 is of course more than 5, but the stock wheels are hub-centric, not lug-centric, and with hub-centric wheels, the number of lugs doesn't matter quite as much. A second change that Toyota made was going to a fully boxed frame. A fully boxed frame should theoretically add stiffness and load carrying capacity to the vehicle.
Here's the fully boxed frame of the new Tundra. You can see it just behind the wheel there. That's supposed to increase the overall stiffness and help with payload.
Another adjustment that Toyota made that should help improve the payload is the composite bed that you see here. It's reinforced with aluminum, and the composite aluminum should be substantially lighter and at least as strong as the steel bed. But as we'll see here, each of these things is compromised, and the true payload or carrying capacity of this vehicle has not really improved. So reason number one that these vehicles are compromised is the axle ratings. Take a look at my front and rear axle here, my 2018 Toyota Tundra CrewMax with 4-wheel drive. And this is standard, by the way, on all Tundras for the second gen. The front axle is rated at 4,000 pounds, the rear axle at 4,150. And if we look at the new Tundra, the front axle is 3,945 pounds, not too bad, but the rear axle is only 3,670 pounds. That's just awful compared to the old Tundra, and really not even in keeping up with the marketplace. The Ram 1500 comes in at 4,100 pounds for the rear axle, and both Ford and GM come in excess of 3,800 pounds. The Tundra literally went backwards from first in class to worst in class.
Right here, this rear axle in my second generation Tundra. This thing is big and this thing is bulky, and I've tried to figure out exactly how much it weighs. I haven't been able to do that. If anybody knows that information and they want to comment and leave a explanation, I'd love to hear it. But I'm going to say the over-under on this thing is easily 250 pounds, and I think that's probably being conservative. And when you see it next to the second generation Tundra and you look at that rear axle, you're going to be awed at how little that thing is. I mean, puny, really. Essentially, the rear axle in the second generation Tundra versus the third generation, the 2022, it makes that third generation look like a guy that skipped leg day.
So not only are you giving up the 500 pounds of overbuilt functionality in that big hog of a rear axle and housing that you see here, you probably gained about 75 to 80 pounds of payload in the new Tundra because of the decreased materials. You have to ask yourself, is that compromise really worth it? The number two reason the payload is compromised has to do with fuel tank capacity. My second generation Tundra has a 38-gallon fuel tank in it. This new third generation comes with a maximum of a 32-gallon gas tank. 6 gallons of gasoline weighs roughly 48 pounds. If we also include the materials for the extra tank size, easily we're saying that you've lost 50 pounds in fuel tank loss. So I can pick up about 50 pounds of payload just by simply not filling my fuel tank all the way up and stopping just over 3/4 of a tank. If you're a guy like me, you'd much rather have the extra fuel tank size than you would, and the range that goes with that, than you would the reduced tank and a bigger sticker number. Just silly. The third reason the payload is compromised has to do with the coil springs that you see right here that are now in the rear of the third generation Tundra. The second generation was known as being overbuilt, tough, able to do work, and it had leaf springs. If you look at 3/4 ton and half-ton vehicles, they have leaf springs. Now I realize some of the competition has gone to Coil Springs because everybody wants an improved ride in their truck. Unfortunately, improved ride doesn't always equal improved performance, and when it comes to payload, this is a compromise. The fourth reason that the payload is compromised has to do with accessories. Now, this truck that you're seeing right here is a 1794, and it was part of the introduction to the media that was done a few months ago by Toyota. When TFL covered this truck, they noted that the payload sticker showed 1,270 pounds. Now, that's only 85 pounds over my second generation four-wheel drive Platinum. The other thing that you could see as they covered this Tundra was the model number, and as I tracked the model number, it is indeed for a Platinum or a Crewmax in four-wheel drive with the standard bed length, not the 5.5-foot bed, and that model is supposed to have a rating of 1,345 pounds, so we can only assume that this was reduced by accessories. Specifically, the payload reduction on this vehicle has to be due to the TRD off-road package in all likelihood. There is no other explanation for it. If they were to have the power side steps and the power bed step, this would have added substantially more weight, and clearly looking at images of this vehicle, it does not have those options. If it was to have those options, this weight would be reduced even more, and my guess is would likely fall below that of my 2018 Toyota Tundra Platinum in terms of its payload rating. None of this addresses the payload compromise of the iForce Max engine with its nickel metal hydride battery, which is likely to weigh several hundred pounds. Being that this is a shared platform amongst several vehicles, I highly doubt that Toyota is going to give that version of the Tundra its own components to change the payload rating. This brings us to the fifth reason that the 2022 Tundra payload is compromised, and it has to do with the funky math. Now, this is not unique to Toyota. A lot of manufacturers use funky math when calculating gross vehicle weight rating, but Toyota is taking it to a new level here where they have been pretty reliable in the past. As we went over earlier, the gross combined axle weight rating front and rear for the second generation Tundra is 8,150 pounds, and the highest gross vehicle weight rating for any second generation Tundra is 7,200 pounds. From what we can see here from the lines highlighted in blue, the highest gross vehicle weight rating of the Tundra exceeds 7,780 pounds, and why payload is marked significantly higher. The problem I have with that is the combined gross axle weight rating for this 2022 Tundra is only 7,615 pounds. How do you get a 7,780 pound gross vehicle weight rating which exceeds your axles? If someone out there has an explanation of how Toyota was able to exceed their combined gross axle weight rating with their gross vehicle weight rating, I'd love to hear it. I'd also love to hear which components you think they made changes that caused this big change in the gross vehicle weight rating. I don't think that the brakes can account for that much. I don't think the 6 lugs can count for that much, even though they're hub-centric. And I also don't think the fully boxed frame can account for that much, certainly not with rear coils. Again, hope you learned something from this video, and especially if you're someone like me who counts on the reliability of Toyota when it comes to towing and hauling, and let me know what your thoughts are.